I want to invite you to learn to love change. Not because we're suckers for punishment, not because we always want things to be moving all around us, but because change is a necessary part of life. And learning to navigate change with grace will enable us to become people of strength that carry forward the strength that God has birthed in us in previous seasons into the following seasons. I've got a mini-series I'm starting with you today, Necessary Endings and Starting New or New Beginnings. And I'm going to start with endings because I believe that some things need to be brought to an end so that we can step into the new beginnings that God has for us. Now, there's an obvious context for our discussion today. We are, as a church, getting ready to say goodbye to Lindsay and Carla. We've already said goodbye to Emma and Logan, people who've invested a huge amount in our church. But not just thinking about those, there are other things that impact our decision-making in seasons of change. Maybe you might be in a point of uncertainty for yourself. Maybe you're in a failing relationship and wondering, where do you go from here? Maybe you've got a difficult work context and you're struggling with how to make godly decisions. Maybe you've got problems with your health and you don't know how to move forward and you're just waiting on news from the doctors and healthcare professionals. Or sometimes you find yourself in a situation that doesn't end. Perhaps a difficult situation where you're co-parenting but separated. Maybe you have family members that have long-term let you down, and it's your hope every Christmas or Easter that things are going to get better, and they don't change. How do we walk through these seasons healthy, strong, and able to move into all that God has for us? In short, I'm recognizing that we are all in a place where there's some turbulence going on. It's important to acknowledge that we all process change differently. Every single one of us in the room, marked with a unique number of hairs on our head, unique fingerprints, unique gifts and talents, unique ways of processing change and loss. Some of you will be absolutely fine when you face change. You, in fact, are looking forward to change, looking forward to the future, looking forward to new opportunities, looking forward to fresh revelations, looking forward to what God might do. But even if you're someone that thrives in the space of change, I want to encourage you to, from time to time, check in with yourself. From time to time, bring your disappointments in a season to God. Bring them into His presence. It's so important to start when they're disappointments before they become bitternesses, before they become something that consumes our life. But others of us might not be fine. Maybe you're seeing change happening around you and you're thinking about your own place in the middle of everything that's going on. Not being sure of what's going to happen, what you can depend on the next day and the coming week might lead you to be triggered about previous emotional experiences from other times in your life, causing you to ask questions like, what does this mean? Did anyone think about me? God, can I leave? Can I make a change? There's something important that I want to get over with today's message, that so often when there's turbulence, God can take that time to teach us something about us and about Him. And actually, that gift of learning will be so precious for the rest of your life. There are a few things that we need to do when we face a time of change before we get to talking about endings. What we need to do when things are uncertain is to continue choosing Jesus' way, which includes healthy boundaries. How do we choose Jesus' way? Well, we keep doing what He last told us to do. And maybe it's not so dynamic as He told you to be a pastor or a manager in the office or a parent. Maybe you found yourself in those situations over time. But choosing Jesus' way is choosing to show up with love, choosing to show up serving, choosing to show up with forgiveness. That base helps us to keep engaged with life, even if things begin to move around us. And it helps us to show up and embrace change when change begins to happen. Because change is a space, hopefully, where we can come to know that we can experience personal growth, where we might have an opportunity to develop, where there might be gifts that we would receive to carry us into the future, or there might be an opportunity to celebrate gifts that we've had that aren't with us forever. But these things are the things that will make a difference. In times of change, keeping the choice at the top of your list to connect. When things get turbulent, it's actually the time where we should slow down and look around us. I say that first because when things get uncertain, our first response is to speed up and leave. Speed up and get home to do something else. Speed up and get home to be on my device or on the internet or watching a movie, checking out of life. But actually, when things begin to get difficult, it's so important for us to slow down and connect. To spend more time with the people in your life that can help you draw near to God. This might mean actually taking a step that you haven't taken before to all of you. I'm just going to say this up front, because if you're thinking about leaving, you're going to think, who told him? Why is he saying all this stuff to me? Or you might be thinking, has Gabe had a conversation with someone that he's now exposing my secrets publicly? I'm just talking about things that I've experienced in 20 years of ministry, okay? I've talked to thousands of people on their journeys. But if you're one of those people right now, who I'm talking to right now, who comes into church lastminute.com, straight after the first song's finished, and you time your run to, let's everybody stand together, we're going to worship God one last time, and you're like, bang, you're out the door, flash, before anyone even noticed you. Maybe you need to listen to that first piece of advice. Slow down and connect. Out there, you've got all your mates who are leading you into the world. It's so important to slow down and connect with people here who have the same faith perspective to go with you into the world, to lead you, keep challenging you to draw near to God. So first, connect. Your people might not look like your old people when you start to look around, but they could be people that will make a difference in your life going forward. Second is learn. Make room to learn. You know, there are people in the room who've been through change before. And particularly if they have lots of white hair, they've been through lots of change. Can I encourage you to take the time to say, how did you navigate change? A few years back, we went through a season of change. We were in the middle of COVID, leadership changes, staff changes, a whole lot of turbulence in the church. Lots of things were going on. If you want the story, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you afterwards. But in that season of lots of change, I noticed something really significant. The people who were facing their first major season of change, 20 years old, 30 years old groups, didn't handle it well. People who were 40, 50, 60, 70, happy as all. They'd been through change. They knew how to navigate change. They knew how to dig into God. They knew how to keep connected. They knew how to lead with wisdom. And it's so important that we look out and say, hey, I'm going through a time of change. Can you help me out with how I should go through a time of change? Building resilience is about that, adding to your connections. And I just want to specify in this, not just connecting, but in your inner circle, you probably need to think on a regular basis of adding people into your inner circle. Maybe right now you say, I have 2 or 3 good friends. By the end of the year, can you add another good friend? By the end of the next year, can you add another good friend? Why? Because natural attrition. Someone's going to get married, someone's going to move, someone's going to get a job that means you can't meet up as frequently anymore. And all of a sudden, you're like 3 friends to 1. What do I do? But if you keep growing and you keep connecting, you keep building your relationship circle, it sets you up for that natural change that happens. And also just for discipleship groups, so important. You know, by the time you hit 40, it gets super hard to make friends. Try moving cities and make new friends as well. Try being a pastor of a church and trying to make new friends when everyone thinks you're a pastor. It's impossible. But you've got to choose intentionally to make friends the later in life you go. You might start out with 30 friends when you're 10. You might shrink down to, you might expand up to 100 friends at uni. Then you start gradually over time shrinking down. And that happens in discipleship groups. We got this 5 families. It was so amazing. But then 2 families moved. Oh, we got 3 families. It's so amazing. I know them so well. I can't add anyone else. You need to add other people in. Otherwise, you just end up with a place where you've got no friends because of natural attrition. But that's building resilience. And hopefully in this process, you begin to mature. And when you're saying goodbye to others, say goodbye to, for example, Lindsay and Carla in a few weeks, or Emma and Logan as we just did, you might look around and be like, there's a gap. There's a space. maybe it's your chance to rise. Maybe it's your chance to mature. Maybe it's your chance to do some of the stuff that they did for you to be a blessing to others. In times of change, it's important to carry your vision, to remind yourself, this is who I am, this is what God made me for. That helps you stay connected to the purpose and the vision that he has for you. And in the midst of all of that, please look after yourself. Take time to manage your boundaries. Take time to have rest days, emotional health days, and so on. These are all really, really significant things for us to think about while we're going through change. But sometimes change leads us towards endings, and that's where I want to spend the rest of my time focusing. I know what it is to experience a lot of change. I mean, we've moved countries a few times, but there was a specific challenge in my life a number of years ago. After a couple of years after getting married, in the space of 9 months, 3 of my closest friends moved away. 2 left the country, 1 moved out of London. My immediate pastor got another job serving in another church. I had a change of role in the church and much more responsibility to take on. And some of the color just honestly went out of life. And it probably took about 9 months for me to come right. Thank God for Rebecca supporting me during that time. But I had to navigate this difficult space of knowing that she loved me and I loved her. But I was also grieving this space of my best friends. And honestly, going to work wasn't fun. Getting up and connecting with people wasn't fun. I didn't have the same depth with them. But that's the kind of context out of which I'm starting to share these things with you, that we need to learn what it is to keep connected, keep moving through times of change, learn how we can grow in our times of change. So when it comes to endings, though, there comes times when you need to leave. We came to a point where we had to leave London, and we had to begin to engage not just the process, but everyone's emotions surrounding it. And one of the most frequent things that we came across was in a transient city where everything changes, people were still people. No one wanted things to change. And we don't like things changing. But we need to come to a point where we recognize that endings are necessary. In fact, they are part of God's baked-in design into this creation. And there's an image that's in the scriptures. You might think it's a strange one to bring here, but it's a helpful one of Jesus speaking of the vine in John 15. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that he might bear more fruit. Already you're clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my word abides in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As you can already guess, today's a bit of a practical message, and we have a practical gardening analogy here before us to examine what it looks like for things to change. The gardener takes a necessary role. And though there is this emphasis that we're going to look at in a bit on the removal of different branches, the key thing that I want us to take away is how do we keep grounded in our relationship with Jesus and what he's doing in our life as change happens around us? How do we keep Christ-centered when we look at the changes that need to happen in our lives? So 4 things. My first statement to you: it may seem strange to speak on necessary endings, but I'm not suggesting to you that you need to leave. Please hear me on that. Our first thought is pruning. Pruning is not just a necessary process, but it's a decision-making process. It's a decision-making process about what needs to end. What needs to make way for clarity? What needs to make way to give more life? And as this gardener is looking at, in this case, a grapevine, he's thinking, what do I need to do? what do I need to remove or make room for in order for fruit and life to come? And so he's acknowledging that some things need to be removed. Dead or sick aspects of the vine, toxic or unproductive aspects of the vine need to be removed. Some branches that are healthy need to be removed. Some good things need to make way for God things. When we have people onboarding and serving in the church and getting engaged in that kind of a way, we believe that service is not the pinnacle of your ministry. It's just us all doing the housework together. Someone's got to do the dishes. Someone's got to do the vacuuming. Someone's got to do the making the beds and all that stuff. So we ask you to serve for that reason. But when someone comes in full of passion, they're like, I want to serve in the kids ministry, and I want to be on the worship team, and I want to be in night church. Hold on. They're all good ideas, but pick one, because that's the God idea. Not all of them, just one of them. And so the pruner is making decisions. How can I take you to the next level? And there are some situations that require us to wait. Maybe you are pruning, and as you look in amongst the branches, you notice hanging from one of those branches a chrysalis. Now, I know I'm moving a little bit away from the vine metaphor, but it's sitting right there. What is a chrysalis? It's a stage between a caterpillar and a butterfly, right? And when you look into it, there's a whole lot of mess in the chrysalis. It's not a formed, explainable space. It's a gooey, messy space. Sometimes marriages are like chrysalises. The first 1, 2, 3 years are amazing caterpillar years. You're happy, you're crawling all over the leaf, eating all the food you want, having fun, and then you get into the challenges of actually living together and actually living the rest of your life with each other. And so sometimes from 3 to 10, sometimes longer, if you don't face this mid-state process well, it can feel like a gooey mess. And you're like, actually, how do we communicate? I was behaving really nicely before, but now I'm finding the gloves are off. Like, how do we do this? It's messy. It's gooey. You're having kids. You're moving jobs. Someone's getting more responsibility. Someone's bringing more finances into the family. Whatever it might be, it's a mess. But if you navigate the mess season, you get through to the butterfly season. And hopefully it's not a butterfly that lives a few weeks. It's one that lives for decades. But it's a necessary transition phase. You don't remove the branch when there's a necessary transition phase. But there are some other mid-states that people have got stuck in where they're just cluttered. Maybe life has just got so busy that you're like saying regularly, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out. You've got so full of stuff that you're just trying to survive and you can't see the wood for the trees. There's a few branches that probably need to get removed. There are other cluttered messes where you haven't actually properly bound to the vine. So maybe your relationship with Jesus isn't the driving force in your life, or maybe you haven't bound to the body of Christ, the community that he's called you to be part of. You haven't engaged properly, and so you find yourself in a mid-state. Nominal faith. Church attendance without meaningful discipleship. Or maybe you're in a spot where you really need to move on, but you just haven't said goodbye properly. You're in the middle of 1,000 goodbyes. Like you ended a relationship, but then one lonely night you sent a text. And then reignited a relationship that you know that you don't want to be in. And then a few months later, you get rid of that and try again and again and again. You haven't said goodbye properly. Or maybe there's a relationship that you need to say goodbye to, one that's holding you back, one that's limiting what God is calling you to, what he's set you free from to do. And you're caught in this messy place of, I love you, but I don't know how to move forward. I love you, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. These are spaces where the pruner needs to make a decision. And that decision might look like leaving. But if you get to this point where you're like, I'm going to leave, here's what not to do. So important we learn how not to leave and why it's important. Let's move away for a moment. A way of thinking about this in the illustration that we have before us is that you didn't just prune the branches when you came to leave. You cut down the vine, you ripped out the roots, you concreted over the top. That's how some of us leave. But when you leave that way, it doesn't set you up for success. But let me take you back a few steps before you make that decision to leave. Any of you like swimming? Any of you like swimming in the sea? It's a beautiful sea we have. It's a shame it's so cold, but you can get wetsuits and so on. But one of the great things about being in the sea is just the raw power of the waves. It's not like a swimming pool where it's just kids splashing you. You're wading out there into the waves. And my boys love getting out there into the waves now. They're like, Dad, can you watch me? And they're going out to about chest height, and they're jumping with the waves and, trying to ride the waves through. And I'm like, they need to learn about this. It's all good. They need to learn about this. So every now and then I'll go out with them and I'll stand next to them. I'll go, okay, boy, we're not far out enough. And they're like, what? No, we need to go a bit further. We're between the flags. It's okay. They're watching us. But we need to go a bit further. We need to go to that space where the wave's going to smash you. I love it. And they get smashed by the waves. And I talk about them getting washing machined. And they get thrown in and the wave hits them and they're getting spun around. Any of you know what that's like? All of you stayed on the ground for too long. But when you go in the sea, it's like that. And you learn how to ride through these waves that smash you, but then you learn pretty quick, I need to watch. I need to look for the waves. I need to ride the wave when it comes in. I need to be in the right spot. I can't be right in front of it, otherwise it's going to hit me. And I learn to cultivate means of navigating the waves of life. But sometimes we find ourselves, be it circumstance, be it lack of preparation, be it being blindsided, we find ourselves standing in front of a wave that is just going to smash right on top of us. And you end up getting washing machined, spun around all over the place, swept off your feet. And before you know it, before you've had a chance to come up to breathe again, suddenly another wave straight on top of you. And before you know it, you've had 3-4 waves. You've lost your glasses like Lindsay did when he was baptizing people. You've got new ones? Are they new ones yet? Brand new, hallelujah, got them back. Awesome. Sometimes we're in the middle of that process and we make a decision. We're about to get smashed by a wave, or we've been smashed by a wave, and we make a decision. But you get the analogy that actually it's possible for us to learn to see what's coming, to react differently, to position ourselves differently, and that's what I'm trying to get us to. But when you're reacting badly, digging out the vine and concreting it over, you're going to have a problem with the rest of your life. And I don't mean this as a curse. I'm not saying this I'm directing your future way. This is just observing reality. Why? Because where you go, you are. It's one of the enduring truths about life. You take yourself with you. You leave one place without leaving healthy, without leaving well, without having taken care, you arrive in the next place in a mess. How you leave is how you arrive. If you leave bitter, you arrive bitter. If you leave with unresolved baggage, you carry that baggage with you. This is why you don't end a relationship in the middle of starting a new one. Finish the one, pack your bags, leave them, start a new relationship. Don't go from one to another straight away because you carry that big baggage with you. And the reality is when you show up in a new place where you're going to, you bring the same filter. The new place might be healthy as. It might be a great place for you to grow and flourish, but all you see is the filter that you've carried from the previous place that you're in. Leaving a place bitter, be it a workplace, be it a family relationship, be it a city, leaving bitter sets you up to be a spectator in your new location. Watching, waiting, suspicious, to see if it's really the same as where you've just come from. Can I just say this to you as someone who's had 1,000 conversations of this type over 20 years? If you look at where someone's life ends up when they leave badly, their faith gets shipwrecked, their relationships are all over the show, they're not meaningfully engaged in any community. Don't be someone that leaves for the wrong reasons. It's so important, for example, to communicate before you leave with the people that matter. As I've said to you before, sometimes we communicate with everyone else except the people that matter. Who are the people you're offended with? Who are the people you've got issues with? They're the ones you need to have a chat with. Maybe you've got uncommunicated disappointments. Maybe they said something to you that really cut you or made you feel unseen, and you've not processed it well. It's on you to have that conversation. That's a Jesus directive, not a Gabe directive. If you remember you've got a problem with your brother, go to him one to another before you give your offering and make peace. So communicate. Don't fail to say goodbye. Leaving without saying goodbye is one of the scourges of our modern age. You know, we've seen massive increases in mental health issues. Ghosting is a massive cause of mental health issues. Ghosting, if you don't know, in the age before internet, ghosting is when you just absent yourself from a relationship without even saying goodbye. 1 minute you're texting, next minute you've blocked all phone numbers. Ghosting people doesn't lead to healthy outcomes. And particularly if we think about our context, thinking about church hopping. What's really interesting to me in this space is, as a community, as a people generally, we're getting more and more resistant to institutions. We hate the idea of church as an institution, but we treat the church like an institution. How can you be offended at the church being an institution when you treat it like one? What do I mean by that? Well, actually, what the church is supposed to be is all of you being connected one to another, having meaningful community and relationships where you encourage each other in faith. The church is about community, not about the structure and organization, about the community. But when it comes time for someone to leave, we don't act in a community way. Like, I'm offended with the church, I'm offended with the leadership, I'll see you later. But what about the person who's spent decades building relationship with you? What about the person who has shared their innermost secrets with you? What about the person who's prayed with you? What about the people that have stood with you? We've got to start treating the church like the community that it is. And when you realize that actually church is community, how do I address my relationships? How should I address my relationships? So don't leave in a mess. Don't leave bad. Don't leave with a train wreck behind you. Instead, let me encourage you with a different vision of how things might change, because we acknowledge that people do need to leave from time to time. Now, what would you do if you've never been a gardener before and you were wanting to plant tomatoes? Apparently, Graham is the ninja at tomatoes. Peter is the disciple of Graham when it comes to tomato growing. And Mao is the renegade vegetable planter over here doing her own thing. But if you wanted to be a gardener and you've never learned how to garden, what do? You get help. You have a conversation. And if you're trying to figure out where the Lord might be leading you, it's so important to help. Ask for help. This is about discerning God's voice. Do I need a change or do I need an end? Have a conversation. Have a conversation with two different kinds of people. Maybe the first type of person to have a conversation with is the person, like I just said, you've had difficulty with. Maybe a leader let you down. Maybe something difficult was said. Have a conversation. Am I really understanding you correctly? I'm feeling this kind of way, but have I interpreted this right? Did you really intend for me to think about leaving? Did you really intend to say that I wasn't able to serve? Did you really intend to minimize what I was going through? Have a conversation. That's an important start. But second, seek out wisdom. Seek out counselors. Seek out people who will ask you the difficult questions. This is exactly what Lindsay did. Lindsay, as you heard, has been looking at his family situation. His parents and Carla's parents was sick, and they're thinking, how can we be supportive? And they're like, God, what do we do? How do we go? Someone calls him up and offers him a job back home. He doesn't go, yes, God's opened the door, and that's it. See you later, pack my bags. He first comes to me, Gabe, I need to have a chat with you. It's going to be a hard chat. We sit down, have that chat. 2.5 years we've been serving together, building, thinking, this is the next 10 years to go, let's go. This has happened. What do you think I need to do? What I think you need to do is let's include the oversight. Let's have a wide conversation, because these are all people that are invested in you. So we go and have a big conversation. 3-week discernment period, praying, thinking about it, asking. Before Lindsay then goes and says, before we go back to Lindsay, say, Lindsay, family, you've got to look after your family. He goes back and says to them, okay, cool, can come. But it was a whole process. And this is from someone I've done 20 years of ministry. How long have you done? 30, 40? 30 at least? 30 years. still wanted to have a conversation about his future, still wanted to open up and say, how should I handle it? This is the way we're to do things, not because I'm any kind of authority in over Lindsay's decisions, but he's choosing for me as his pastor to give wisdom in the context that he's facing, the oversight as his oversight, to give wisdom in this situation. Seek the wisdom of counselors. Seek people that you can ask, am I doing the right thing? Should I be changing? Should I be seeking change? Or should I be leaving? What needs to happen? You know, my dad said to me when I was a kid, he said, don't get married, buy a house, move city in the same year. And what do you do? Get married, buy a house. No, but we moved city, changed jobs, bought a house, found a new community in the same year. His logic for that was, it's too much change at once. And maybe when you're going through change, you're like, hey, I want to change everything. And you speak to a counselor and they're like, hey, can I just encourage you to slow up? Because if you are going to remove yourself from your community, your job, everything, and move, how are you going to sustain your community bridge in the gap? How are you going to sustain your spirituality in the gap? How are you going to look after your family in the gap? Can we talk through these things? Here's some wisdom. Now, I'm not saying all of this because I want a full inbox tomorrow morning. Gabe, we're thinking of leaving. But I'm saying it's so healthy when you seek out me or any of the other leaders, your discipleship group leader, and say, hey, listen, I'm processing this. What do you think? Because so often what happens is people come and present, we're leaving because A, B, C, D, E. Okay, you do what you want to do. But if you really wanting to ask, can we step back a bit and have a conversation? So that we can discern God's voice. Sometimes you might look at a situation, think, I got to run. The door's open, I got to jump through that door. Can I just say this to you? If God opened the door, he can keep it open. If you feel pressure to jump into a decision, it's probably not God. Because God wants you to make healthy, wise, considered decisions. And asking people might help then set up what is a healthy next step. What are the decisions that need to be made? What are the changes that need to happen? Maybe you've found yourself in a context where you're like, I don't feel appreciated, or I'm not advancing, or I'm not growing, or I'm struggling with this relationship. Let's have a conversation, because we can make way for people to grow, of course. But if all of that does happen, and you still come to a point where you're like, I need to leave well, this is the vine flourishing. You know, you can take a branch from a vine and they would pick a healthy branch, a branch that looks strong. You could take that branch and transplant it and plant it into another branch, and it can into another vine, and it can flourish. But they're not going to take a weak one, a dead one, and go to the effort of transplanting. They're going to take a vibrant, struggling. So you've got to ask yourself, how do I leave well? What can I encourage you with this basic? Covet God's blessing. Make it your determination. I'm going to leave with the blessing of God. So that includes leaving for the right reasons. I've had conversations. We didn't see any traction. We didn't see any change. That's a fair point to then say, okay, I believe I've done what I can do. It's time for me to move on. Keeping healthy relationships with where you've left from is a great way to leave blessed. Don't burn the bridges. Don't tear it down. Go to someone and say, listen, I'm changing seats. I'm moving on, but I really value our relationship. Can we keep in touch? I know that it's going to take an extra cost for me and for you to be able to keep in touch, but can we do that? In the time that you are getting ready to go, speaking well of where you left. And this happens in the workplace. If you're going to your new colleagues, the old workplace sucked, it was terrible, backstabbing, mismanagement, misappropriation of funds, terrible place. They're not sitting there going, oh, great, so pleased to have you. They're sitting there thinking, Flip, problem maker, troublemaker, complainer. If you're leaving somewhere, you leave and bless them. And maybe they have done things wrong. You still bless them. You still speak well. You still say, hey, listen, I got a lot out of my time there, but it's now my opportunity to step into a new place. And then you communicate clearly with the people that are affected. Final thought, serve until you go. Serve until you go. Like I really struggled with when we were leaving London because no one ever thought I was going to leave London. And my boss definitely didn't want me to leave London. He didn't talk to me for about 3 months. I had to make a choice. Am I going to get upset about that? Or am I going to leave well? So just kept serving and kept serving and kept serving right up until I left. Kept blessing, kept honoring, kept speaking well of the place right up until I left. Now when I go back, I get fully welcomed. It's like the prodigal's returned. No, not the prodigal, but I get so welcomed back. You know, why we say this is because would you be welcome back at the place you just left? Would you be welcome back at the church you just moved on from, the workplace you just... Or would you find that a bit awkward? When you find the grass isn't greener on the other side, when you find that God didn't lead you somewhere, can you go back to where you last felt great? Well, you can, but you need to go back and you need to make peace. And you need to come up and have a conversation. And you need to figure out, hey, I didn't do so well that time. How do I do things differently going forward? Say all of this because there are people in the room who need to leave. Now, I said at the beginning I wasn't asking you to leave, and I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking you to leave some stuff in your heart. I'm asking you to say, actually, I need to leave well to set myself up for enduring health. Maybe there are some things today that you need to move on from. A relationship that you've carried in your heart for years, and it's affecting your relationships that you're in today. You compare everything to this previous standard. You wish you were there instead of here. Maybe the job you had paid you loads of money and now you're not in a job that pays you so much and you're like, oh, what about that? Maybe you're navigating a blended family and trying to figure out how do we do life together, comparing it to what was. Maybe the toxic job situation is your current reality. Maybe we need to take some steps to move on from these things. No more toxic relationships. No more putting up with a toxic work culture. Healthy conversations going forward, not just ducking away and leaving quietly, but actually fronting up and saying, I need to have some chats with you. This is some stuff that I've really been experiencing. Because when we leave well, it sets us up to arrive well. Can we pray? Team's going to come on up. Father, I lift up everyone in the room. We've all been through change. We're going through change right now. We've all seen good stuff. We've all seen bad stuff. But Father, in this moment, I pray for everyone that's reflecting on their own part to play. Maybe they weren't willing to end a relationship that God asked them to end. Maybe they weren't able to draw a boundary and they find themselves in a complicated living situation now. Maybe there's difficult things at work and they haven't known how to speak up. Father, I pray, Lord, wherever we need an ending, Lord, I ask that you would help us with the wisdom from God to end that space well. If we're thinking about the future, Lord, give us counselors to help us with our decision-making process. People that we respect, that have journeyed with God. If we need to just end the old way of doing things to step into a new way of doing things in the same place, help us to do that. Help us to leave behind dysfunctional aspects of relationship and step into healthy ways of relating. Help us to leave behind arguments and discord. Help us to step into peace. Help us to step into understanding one another and hearing one another. And in this context, Lord, for those that have been carrying sin, and where sin is clouding the future that you have for each one, Lord, I pray that you'd help us to put an end to that sin by the grace of God. We want to step into all you have for us, Father. In this season, particularly of change, we want to acknowledge it's difficult when loved ones move on. But help us navigate our time. Help us to celebrate what we had. Help us to champion them as they step into the future that you've prepared for them. And help us to heal as we stay behind and keep serving and doing the things you've called us to here in this place. Lord, help us to become a people that know what it is to stand in the waves and see the challenges coming and know how to prepare. And know how to prepare for change and know how to navigate change in a way where we keep growing and keep flourishing in who you've made us to be. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name.